Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm saying this. Is this something that has to be said? I don't want to sound mean. Like, I am like one of the nicest people I know. I'm so nice. But I have to tell you, I get it from my dad. There's a bit of a mean streak in me. Bit of a mean streak. So maybe it makes me uniquely qualified to talk to people and say, I'm recognizing the syndrome. Okay. There is a certain class or a certain species of white girls that are just ignored by white males. Maybe they're too nerdy, they're too awkward, they're too tall, they're too smart, they're too arrogant, they're too smart-mouthed. And so they tend to be courted by non-white males, and I'm saying I love it. You know, I love the fact that a black man can marry a white woman, and a Hispanic man can marry an Asian woman. It really, to me, people are people. We're all human beings. But I'm saying, I was actually in that category for a while, not really being liked and appreciated by the other, white people in society. Well, she's not blonde enough. This is the thing. I think blonde hair is beautiful. We should never be envious of anybody who has blonde hair. I mean, my brother had blonde hair. He was like the perfect Aryan. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. We had the same parents, of course, but I see the other side of things. However, my brother, he had difficulty growing up too, because he was just an outsider, a little bit different, or something like that. And so he became friends with the misfits. Those people that played Dungeons and Dragons. One of his best friends committed suicide, and then my brother, like 10 or so years later, he followed suit. So please, the misfits, I want to tell you, there was, wow, a large contingent of misfits in the community that I graduated high school from. Can we say it that way? Like, I used to work at this particular place. It's now a Taco Bell. It used to be like Darriette. And there was this guy that actually drove a hearse. He drove a hearse. Like, if you're a kid, if you're a teenager, or you're in your early 20s, you go out, you deliberately buy a hearse and drive it around. He did that. You know what? But it also turns out, I heard this a few years later, he actually broke his baby boy's arms because he was so enraged. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl, but... And I'm like, thanks, Mother. Thanks for spreading a little ray of sunshine and letting... I was tormented by that for years. It's like I've tried to fall asleep and I think about this guy who used to come into, where I worked. And he had like the John Lennon glasses and he drove a hearse. He actually drove a hearse. He broke his baby boy's arms. Can you even... an infant that can't even crawl? My Lord. It reminds me of that Guns N' Roses song, Dead Horse, and you hear like the cracking of the bones. Oh my goodness gracious, you're kidding me. Every time I think I've told everybody about the trauma I've experienced, it's like, well, there's more trauma where that came from. But I digress. So, I have said in the past that one of my favorite novels, probably it was my favorite novel when I used to read things, was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Because this little girl was so rejected and considered so ugly and so mistreated. And the protagonist, Mr. Rochester, was also very ugly himself. He fell in love with her even though she wasn't pretty. And I thought, someday when I was very awkward and I had pimples and I was fat and I had glasses, well, has anything changed? Okay, whatever. I thought if I could just find a man who would love me for myself, would not look on my outward appearance and just find me horribly ugly, because my dad called me ugly all the time. He called me fat and ugly all the time. I don't know what I could have done about it, but the more you insult people and berate people, the more they're going to eat. You know what I'm saying? You don't understand. You can't make your daughter more beautiful by calling her ugly. And my mom would harass me for eating too much. Even when I got on a healthy diet and I was eating things with fiber and low fat and everything, she says, Erica, you're just eating all day. Well, Mom, you're just boozing all night. Of course, I could never say anything like that. Then I'm disrespectful. Because I did have a lack of respect for my mother because she was a big boozer. Let's be honest, she really was. She was one of those functional alcoholics. But, this phenomenon of a Western woman, well, we know Western men want a certain type. We want a little petite blonde person, somebody who's not too smart, But my dad really admired my mother because she was tall and tan and young and lovely like a girl from Ipanema. That's a song from the 1970s. I felt as if, why can't I just be what people want me to be, right? Why did I not... Why wasn't I blonde? Why didn't I get good hair? In the black community, there's good hair and bad hair. I kind of put myself in the category of okay hair. I think there's a whole musical about it, not Hair with the hippies, but a black comedy musical about good hair and stuff like that. And yet, it kind of reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where George refused to date a woman who had hair loss. And Elaine finally confronts him and she says, "You're bald!" "I was bald." And then she rips off his toupee and throws it out the window. It's so funny, but yeah, So I'm just giving you some advice here. The person who is rejected in their own culture tends to... I'm not trying to be Louis Farrakhan on you, because he'd say, "Oh, it's wrong for white and black to intermarry." That's bunk, and that's garbage. If you want to marry somebody of a different race, that's great, but do it for the right reasons, seriously, and have the same religion. That's the thing. This is what really annoyed me. Boy, I'm seeing this woman, and I'm sorry if I called her fat. Why does it mean if men can call people fat all day long? When a woman calls another woman fat, that's unforgivable, especially if she is fat. A fat man can call a woman fat. It doesn't matter. Oh, that's comedic. But the truth is, if you're overeating and you're talking too much, blah, 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 blah. So this girl with the glasses on says, "I went to Turkey and I was really a Christian, and then I just lost my religion like REM. Because I saw how wonderful the society was and blah, blah." What, you must not really have been saved. If you could just... I couldn't get a date even in Turkey. Nobody wanted what I had to offer, and I am so upset. I'm reading between the lines. I am still a virgin. I'm 30 years old. No man ever came knocking on my door, back or front. Isn't that pitiful? She's making videos saying, I'm not really sure I'm ready to convert to Islam, but I'm just on the precipice of it, right? What kind of nonsense is that? Do you see how they mistreat people? Are you familiar with the acronym FGM, female genital mutilation? They actually defile the vagina and the clitoris and all the outward parts so that women can't enjoy sex. And in fact, sometimes when women are giving birth, they have to do an episiotomy just to get the baby out because they've got that thing sewed up so tight. There's no way the baby could be born if they hadn't mutilated her and really, really defiled that private part of her body. Are you effing ignorant as well as fat? So I am a nice person. But like I said, I got from my dad this little mean streak. Maybe because of the trauma he experienced in his childhood. Maybe he passed it along to me. But sometimes it takes somebody who's willing to speak up to say, wake up and smell the coffee, sister. Islam is not liberation for women. Thank you for listening.